Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Please take a seat. We would like to start our next session. I'm sure, and I hope you all had very fruitful discussions in the working group, and it's now my great pleasure to give back again to Antonino, who will moderate again also the last session, the closing session, in order to see what the results are the working group has elaborated. So Antonino, please, your turn.
Thank you very much, Christian. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a productive afternoon and enjoyed the discussions in the working group. We are very excited to have with us one representative for each working group. So our closing session is going to work in this way. I'm going to give the floor to each of the representatives for 5 minutes approximately. They will report on the conclusions of their working group. Then hopefully we will have some 20 minutes for discussion among the representatives of the working groups. I will also prepare some questions. And then we will have some closing remarks from the president of the AIF, Pascal Herrenfront. And finally, Christian will give some organizational thoughts and points on how we transition to the evening reception that will take place in the planetarium. So without further ado, I would like to begin with our working groups. I will now call the representative of the Mars Working Group on International Cooperation to turn on the mic, and I bet that is Alice Parte, right?
That's me.
Please, Alice, you have around 5 minutes to present the conclusions of your working group. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I would like to start by thanking our two senior advisors, astronaut Mike Baker and cosmonaut Alexander Alexandrov, who gave really precious inputs to that audience. Also the two co-chairs, Garmin and Alexandra, who are just sitting here, and of course the participants of the working group. We had talking about the strategy of diversity. We had an almost balanced gender-wise, and also a lot of country represented, so that was great. We started the discussion by talking about some models of success in international cooperation, like, for example, the ISS or the Antarctica. But then it was pointed out that some emerging countries were left out of this cooperation, and that should be addressed, and there should be international effort to include them in. Essentially, this include senior advisors sitting together at a table and discussing how to move forward, but also a bottom-up approach could be taken for this type of international cooperation, and it boils down to things as simple as students being able to go abroad. And it was pointed out by one of the members of the audience that it's not always easy for people from emerging countries to, for example, go to NASA or ESA. And this is linked to the fact that space has some history and heritage with the defense industry, which is by nature includes secrecy and non-cooperation. So this was one of the findings, and we also discussed at length how sometimes political agendas can interfere with the possibility of cooperation when it comes to space. But this is already addressed with some international treaties, especially the Outer Space Treaty, sorry. But there are new challenges on the horizon. I mean, some of them have been there for decades, like orbital debris or the use of the geostationary orbit. But along the line and in the future, the space resources will also prove to be challenging, and some policies shall be put together to address and the resolution of potential conflicts and regulate the use of this. And we also potentially discussed the potentiality of having mediating bodies for the resolution of such conflicts. I would like to end with a quote from astronaut Mike Baker that said that nothing big will happen in space if we don't cooperate and come together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very inspiring words and short and sweet. So thank you for staying also within the time. I would like to turn to the representative of the Saturn Working Group on intergenerational collaboration. Camillo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Nino. First of all, I would like to thank the astronaut Hassan Al-Mansouri for the time he dedicated with us today in the Saturn Working Group. I also would like to thank my colleague, Irina Cherning. And of course, I would like to thank the 7 women that attended our working group. It was actually inspiring to see our entire working group was full of female, and it was only 3 male with us in the working group. So it was kind of inspiring to see all female scientists in our working group. So we were talking about intergenerational. So the first thing that we were all discussing was mentorship. So mentorship is a key issue when we are talking about intergenerational gap, because the senior people always act as a mentor for the new generation. So they are the ones teaching us how to do science. They teach us how to address the challenges. They teach us in general how the industry and how everything works in space. And mentorship help us to bridge in the intergenerational gap. In that way, we also were discussing about the STEM. We actually talk about education as a bridge, and of course, STEM education, and using, for example, the opportunities of the regional centers of the space science and technology under UNUSA. And also, when we talk about intergenerational, we also talk about boldness, and of course about being creative and thinking outside the box, because only in that way we can reach new heights in our industry. And of course, when we talk about creativity, we are talking also about space. We need to be passionate in order to pursue a career in space. In that way, when we talk about passion, knowledge building, career, we have to also talk about soft skills. So how to communicate with our colleagues, how to be empathetic with our team. That was one of the things that Hasa told us, how you communicate with your colleagues, especially when you are working in a very diverse, international, intercultural, interdisciplinary team. Also, it's important to highlight and promote your team achievements. When you promote your team achievement, you are giving purpose to your team, and in that way, you can also leverage your teamwork. Finally, I would like to also end with 2 words from Hasa, and he actually shared a thought from that conversation that he had with Mark Kelly. Is like be genuine, and be yourself, and in that way. You can reach new heights. And finally, the more you leave your comfort zone, the more you learn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cami. And I think leaving the comfort zone could be a very interesting point to further explore, because the purpose of space is to push boundaries. And so the reason why we're here, the reason why we do space exploration is exactly to understand how we feel when we go outside the comfort zone, and that's where the magic happens. So it's certainly interesting. Thank you very much. And I would like to turn now to the Jupiter working group. So my dear friend Hamza Ahmed, you have the floor.
Thanks a lot, Antonino. Hello, everyone. My name is Hamza, and I had the privilege to co-chair the Jupiter Working Group alongside my colleague, Julie Patrin-Josset, and astronauts Franz Vibok and Jean-Luc Chrétien. Our working group was tasked with discussing the issue of sustainable exploration of outer space. As part of this, we discussed several different themes, including the idea of taking a holistic approach to sustainable exploration of outer space, as well as issues related to space debris, space resources, and space policy more broadly. While there were several important outcomes from our discussion, the key takeaways can be summarized as follows. 1, we discussed what sustainability means and what is being said when people talk about the sustainable exploration of outer space. In our view, this refers to exploring space in a manner that does not impede, restrict, or impact access to space for future generations. For this, it was noted that interoperability of technology was very important, and that standards should be developed which allow space exploration to take place in a manner which ensures compatibility with future technologies and innovation. It was stressed that lessons learned from Earth need to be kept in mind when exploring outer space. Sustainability on Earth is the same concept as that of sustainability in space, and a bottom-up approach was necessary in this regard. As such, our group acknowledged the importance of education from a grassroots level in order to encourage sustainability as a broader concept, whether that be on Earth or in space. Additionally, it was recognized that there were various other industries in which sustainable practices had been implemented and should be recognized and should be followed in outer space. This included making sure that exploration of outer space did not lead to overuse, exploitation, or irreversible environmental damage. We determined that giving consideration to an idea which we have called CICC leads to sustainability was very important. This refers to competition, innovation, costs, and cooperation. It was noted that policies should be developed that foster competition. Healthy competition would result in innovation, and innovation would automatically result in higher costs for companies participating in the space sector. When costs are high, industry participants are automatically moved towards collaborating and cooperating with one another to minimize costs. In this regard, we discussed examples shared by our astronauts, such as implementing a dock in the space shuttle, allowing it to fit with the Mir space station, as well as other international space missions and the International Space Station. It was recognized that when governments, entities, and organizations cooperate, space exploration becomes more sustainable, cost-effective, and efficient. Lastly, the independence of scientists and scientific research was stressed. It was reflected that endeavors such as the ISS would not have been possible without the independence of scientists and engineers who worked together within their networks and pitched solutions that worked for everyone. In order to do all of this, it was important to develop holistic policies and strategies that took into account the views of all stakeholders involved in the industry. As such, our working group thought it to be very important to involve the private sector in the development of any policies and instruments in the area of space. Moreover, it was recognized that promoting competition and innovation was important. However, it was equally important to have a set of parameters and guidelines within which activities in outer space should be conducted. For this, the role of relevant international organizations was recognized, and it was noted that with an inclusive, holistic, and future-sighted approach, good documents could be developed that ensure the sustainability of space exploration for all generations. I'd like to thank all the participants of our working group for the very engaging discussion, and I'd like to especially thank my fellow co-chairs for adding a lot of value to our discussion and coming up with some very useful outcomes. Thanks, Antonino.
Thank you very much, Hamza. That was very well presented and very thoughtful. You know, it was not an easy topic to talk about sustainability, and even just beginning to define it, it's a challenge in itself. So thank you, and a lot of insights to further discuss there as well. I would like now to turn to the Mercury working group for benefit sharing, and Ignati, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm Ignati from the Mercury Working Group. I was co-chair together with Dr. Priyanka Das, Professor Reinhold Ewald, and Dr. Sergei Krikalev. So the first point we started off with on benefit sharing was the question of whether space exploration is in fact too expensive and what are the benefits of it. We came to, one of the points that we came to was that a lot of the space economy itself is very much Earth-based, and there is a lot of benefits directly from that economic activity, as well as from downstream space services such as geopositioning systems or data or analysis of Earth observation data. We've also looked at what the benefits might be of expanding said space economy beyond geostationary orbit to include cislunar space and beyond. And one of the conclusions we came to is that that is still far off into the future, and currently any benefits that might come from planetary exploration would be mainly scientific, with a lot of potential work into direct use of space resources, such as asteroid mining, probably being more beneficial to settlements that are already up in space. We have also looked at what the situation looks like when you are not able to share in a lot of the benefits of space exploration due to whether it is political or political trade sanctions or other limitations. Looking, for example, at China's development of a mostly independent space program, including human launch capabilities. We have also looked at the other side of that coin, when cooperation is a must due to either a small workforce or a small amount of overall funding, such as in the case of European Union, where France has the Cosmodrome, Germany has the astronaut training center, etc., etc. We have also looked at some of the potential benefits of not being part of benefit sharing, specifically on the military side, as when you are forced to develop the entire the entire space industry from the bottom up, from launcher to satellite to data analysis, you are able to pretty much, with the current state of affairs, launch whatever military satellite you want and do almost what you want with it. Finally, one of the big examples of benefits sharing that we mentioned has been scientific. When it comes to planetary exploration, a lot more can be achieved when results are shared freely and missions are collaborated on. One of the examples brought up was the Venera D mission that involves a number of international partners. Finally, another example from crewed spaceflight would be the existence of certain diplomatic benefits, simply from all sides that are taking part in the cooperation, where the astronauts that are working together, as well as the ground crew that supports them, have the opportunity of learning more about each other and establishing other ties that are outside of the current cooperation. Finally, to take a little detour from direct benefits sharing, we have looked at the social science aspect and the social benefits rather than direct financial or scientific ones. How our perception of the universe and our place in it has changed over time with the advancement of space science. First off, we started with how heliocentrism has changed humans' perception of their place in the universe, and how a more recent movement of cosmic centrism, where we realize that the Earth is not necessarily a very special place. There's thousands upon thousands of other planets around billions of other stars. And that, once again, has changed our perception of both our place in the universe and potentially of our purpose in it. Finally, I'd like to end on two things. One would be the aspect of rhetoric used to describe space exploration. A lot of it has been based around the concept of either colonization and ownership, which brings with it certain assumptions about both ownership of space resources as well as ownership of these benefits that come from space exploration. And we raised the question of whether it needs to be done this way, following this philosophy, or whether there's ways of benefiting from space exploration without direct ownership of resources and need to claim celestial bodies or parts of them as property. And the other final thing has been that there are two threats we've identified to space exploration in general, not coming from space, but to the field of space, which are, on one side, the potential loss of space ethics. Thus far, space exploration has been, for the most part, scientific or exploration-driven, with all military uses restricted to relatively peaceful purposes, with no mass weaponization. And that is a potential concern, as this might not always be the case, and that is something to consider, as obviously that is definitely not a benefit of space exploration which we want to have. The other threat we've identified is that of debris and lack of management of the near-Earth space, in terms of while we are happily sharing in a lot of the benefits of space exploration, there is no real central regulation of orbital debris. And an international cooperation could be used in debris management to then allow everyone to share in the benefits of having a clean and safe near-Earth space. That is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ignati. Very interesting set of thoughts. I confess I never heard philosophical consideration on the transformative value of scientific discoveries in terms of benefit sharing. This is certainly the first time, so thank you for that. It's going to be interesting to further think about this. I would like to turn now to the Neptune working group. We have Ulf Merbold presenting the conclusions. Thank you very much. And new space is the topic.
Does it work now? Okay. In the Neptune Working Group, we discussed the potential of space for scientific results, utilizing microgravity in orbit, utilizing also the fact that present platforms like ISS, in former days Mir, or the shuttle, flies in an orbit above the atmosphere, such that there is a huge potential for astrophysics. And finally, we discussed also the potential to monitor our home planet from a distance in order to see whether nature, in its ability to clean itself, has limits. And that touches also, to a certain degree, let's say, an ethical aspect, because we, the present living generation, has a responsibility to make sure that our children and grandchildren and unborn people can live on Earth in a situation as pleasant, as beneficial as our life situation is at present time. So that was quite interesting. And without going into too much detail, we recognized that spaceflight is, in a way, a continuation what our fathers and grandfathers did with their ships. We recognize that present knowledge is not only created in university type of laboratories. We recognize that people like Columbus or maybe Marco Polo came back from their trips to places where people had not been beforehand, returned knowledge to society that was not known. Columbus, as an example, discovered a new continent, America, for us Europeans. And we recognize that it's now a kind of a challenge to continue what our fathers did with their ships, with our ships. That means go further out and explore, for instance, our neighbor planet, Mars. And it was clear that as a stepping stone to go there, we better go back to the moon and build a little station on the moon or a lunar orbit in order to build up operational experience, how to keep people alive and in good shape in such an artificial world, which a spacecraft actually is. And on the way to Mars, of course, there's a big problem. You cannot simply turn around if you run into trouble with electrical power or whatever, life support. So that was the reason why we should focus now in the near future to build something on the moon, because the good part of it, if something got out of control on the moon, it takes only 2 days to come home to Earth. Well, it was also very clear that in order to achieve all these objectives, continue our experience horizon, continue scientific work in orbit, the best way to do it is actually to cooperate. And I'm an former ESA astronaut, and based on this experience, I can report to everyone, and did it also in this working group, if you combine the potential of various countries, that means combine the intellectual power of many people, skilled people, and also the money, the budget of various countries, it is definitely a good frame to do things which people individually, even countries on a small scale could not do. So, and of course, in this working group, we, Julie Payette and myself, we asked the participants what kind of background they had, and it turned out there was a lot of intellectual potential in the working group, and of course we encouraged them to team up and focus on common goals for the near future. And it was an interesting thing, which also the side effect turned out, it is a kind of a deficient thing, that there is no legal frame around space programs. And on one side, I think there should be some frame. We discussed a little bit that there are now initiatives to fill low Earth space with mini satellites, which to a certain degree is also pollution of space. So with some legal frame, perhaps we could, in a way, limit the abuse of space for commercial objectives. Well, I think that was more or less what we talked about and discussed about. But anyway, I mean, the young generation, that is you people and the participants in the Neptune Working Group, they are now the ones who have to push the border of scientific and also other knowledge of society. And I think you should work hard to prepare yourself to do that. And you are challenged to continue what people, let's say, did and started. There's this famous picture, we stepped on the shoulders of our fathers, and you are now the ones who should continue what other people did. That's basically it.
Thank you very much to astronaut Ulf Merbold, very inspiring. And I really like the idea of collecting the baton from the previous generation. This is certainly one of the things we need to keep in mind when talking about sustainability. This is exactly the point, to go from one generation to another, hopefully in a smooth way. So thank you very much. And I would like to conclude the reports by going to, last but not least, the Venus Working Group on global coordination. And I'd like to leave the floor to my ISU fellow colleague, Jan van Ballen.
Thank you, Anadino. I had the great pleasure to facilitate this session together with Dore Pruneri, a very great Romanian astronaut. And we were tackling the topic of global coordination. As a short reminder, global coordination is not the same as cooperation, where Mr. Pruneria also mentioned that during his flight was in the Cold World War, and there was no communication possible. There was only communication possible to the station during 10 minutes of orbit, because you could not use the antenna network of the other nations and therefore not have live coverage. Then why do we need coordination? Well, there is a lot of interest in space from a various amount of nations, but also with their own interest. And the coordination is actually providing the framework wherein the different stakeholders can pursue their own interest besides each other without conflicting. One example there that was thought upon was space debris. It is in the interest of all stakeholders to have a framework for space debris and to deorbit the old spacecrafts without collaborating on this, but still providing the framework and to preserve the space that we have. Now, how can we do this? There was a question coming from the working group that asked, like, would you go for a bottom-up approach or for a top-down approach, where the top-down approach is already taken by the UN, for example. As I mentioned, to bring down all spacecrafts, it's a common thing to do these days. But the thought was made that we actually need both, where we as a young generation can come into and provide this communication as a bottom-up approach. There were a couple of the key topics that we focused on was, as a first, the peaceful use of space. And all nations have their own interests, but we as a young generation can contribute there in the communication part and reach out to all stakeholders. This involves the second key topic, which was transparency. And transparency is important, although the nations are pursuing space for their national security. So they cannot fully provide a transparent mode on what they are doing. Although the comment was made, or the key takeaway was there, that there should be an agreement to a certain level to build trust and confidence between the parties in order to provide this framework to coordinate. And then as a last point, we said on the non-interference of each other. There is, the analogy was made to what happened before in the mining industry, where it turned to a Wild West, where actually the first owner claimed the land and brought up the gold there. So that's what we should avoid in space, and provide this framework to have the coordination, that we can work together and that every nation can establish their own interests. The last takeaway that I personally take from the session is that parties are coming together to negotiate and to set this framework for the coordination if the stakes are high. And this means when the danger is very high. So the Space Treaty was negotiated in 1967. And this was at a time where the nations realized, like, the nuclear power we have is 10 times or 100 times or even more destructing the whole world. And there they came to the table to negotiate the agreement. But, and there was a big but to make here, this is only when the danger is high for both nations, for both stakeholders, when it is of their both interest to negotiate the contract. And this is to be seen in the future, what will happen up there. But to recap again, we need a top-down approach, we need a bottom-up approach, and we as the young generation can help there to start the communication and provide the floor there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jan. This was also very interesting, and especially the importance and the difference between coordination and cooperation. I think it's a crucial one because they are needed both, but they go into different directions. So it's important to mark the line, and finding ways to coordinate will make sure that everyone can do their own activities, regardless the fact that then they will actually cooperate. So thank you very much. This was very useful. So I have some questions prepared for the chairs, but before I want to ask if you have questions for each other. If any of the working group's co-chair would like to ask anything to the others, that would be much welcome. Otherwise, I will begin with some questions from my end, and then if you have anything that you would like to ask and you think about it, Camilo? Yes.
Well, I would like to keep this super interactive, and maybe we can start like asking audience questions, so we can keep it interactive between our attendees and ourselves. What do you think, guys?
Why not? Of course, also questions from the audience are welcome. We do not have the Slido anymore, so it would be a little bit more complicated, but if you have anything that you would like to ask to the chairs, feel free to just raise your hand. I think your mics should be working, and then you can also take the floor. That would be for sure interesting. And yes, Hamza.
Thanks a lot, Antonino. And my question just goes out to everyone on the panel and more broadly, and relates to something we talked about a lot during our working group. And this was the idea of balancing sustainable exploration with the commercial interests of private entities involved in the space sector. And this sort of forward-thinking approach to sustainability and this global commons approach sometimes does not reconcile with a profit-making model that many companies have. And in our working group, our astronaut colleagues reflected that sustainability was in the interest of all, and that sustainability really does lead to profits in the long term. But I was wondering if this sort of issue came up in any of the other working groups and whether they had any thoughts on that. Thanks.
Thank you. I think it's a very, very good point. The relationship between the cost that sustainability has, but also the long-term advantages that it brings. Anyone from the co-chairs that would like to comment? Yes, Gami. Yes, Gami, please.
All right. So regarding to this question, long-term benefits and how it's going, space exploration feasibility and so on. So I work in the BEST project where we deal with a lot of emerging space countries, and this comes a lot as an argument against space exploration. So I think the fundamental assumption here is space exploration is not a choice, it's a destiny. The fact that there are solid plans from emerging space countries, developing countries, and developed countries about the moon as a starting point for space exploration is a reality in the ground that everyone should be involved in terms of legal drafting opportunities and so on. From philosophical perspective, it's a destiny because it's part of human evolution. I believe in the overview effect, and there were a lot of discussion from philosophical perspective. But I think also from practical parts, there are direct benefits for humanity in Earth for space exploration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ganin. That was very interesting. The perspective of destiny is something that, it's really fascinating, because are we really bound to space exploration as a destiny, or is it something that we do for practical reason, or both? But I see Cami already very eager to comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, that was a big point of discussion in our working group. We were all agreeing that space is truly inspiring humanity since 60 years now, and now is the place where everybody is becoming involved. Before it was just a few countries, now space we can start saying that it's truly a common ground for everyone. Now we have actors, Hollywood people trying to shoot films in space. We actually had a fun conversation around the fact that we should call astronauts actors that are going to space to film movies on the International Space Station. And this take us to think about what is a space for humanity, how is becoming that the next destination for all of us. Before, Moon used to be like a super pristine place where only 3, 4, 12 people could go. Now we are actually talking that some of us that are in this room will be traveling to the moon in the next decade. So it's becoming a common ground for everyone, and it's becoming a real place to go. Maybe in 20 years we will take in vacations on the moon. Who knows? Like, the possibilities are there, the engineering is there, the technology is there. So we just need to take the giant leap and go for it.
Thank you. It is indeed an interesting point, right? We feel that space is in our destiny, but destiny needs to be fulfilled by actions. And so going back to also the main topic that we're trying to discuss today, to make sure that normal people will be able to go to the moon for vacation or for the honeymoon, we need to take steps right now, right? We need to think about how the sustainability aspect will work. And so I want to ask to all the panelists and people from the audience as well, if you're interested, should we develop something new in terms of new ideas, in, let's say, leveraging the creativity of the young generation? For instance, on Earth, and now more and more in space, when you begin a new project that has an impact on the environment, you do an environmental impact assessment, which is something that demonstrates how your activity is going to impact on the environment. Should we think about something like that for space? Should we have a sustainability impact assessment? Should we ask space missions before starting certain space missions, for instance, on the moon, did you plan on how your activity is going to impact the others on this environment? Do you plan on how long this activity can be fulfilled and pursued without endangering the others? Pascal, I see you're... Please.
I'm putting myself into position. Yeah, I think this is a very, very important topic, and I'm also very enlightened that you all take that so very serious, because we have also heard in many sessions also this morning that sustainability, space debris, and all this is really crucial for our future. So I just want to say something that, because I worked a little bit on this topic concerning planetary protection, you have to balance different stakeholder interests right now, and it is really important for all the different stakeholders to understand each other. And you have to have a dialogue, because when you look, for instance, even the Apollo program damaged the atmosphere of the moon for quite a long time. Nobody really knows that, because the atmosphere of the moon is very, very tenuous, but it did. And it is really, really crucial to understand each other, because a lot of the ambitious and commercial space entrepreneurs, which we all want to support and we want to succeed, they really have to understand what is at stake, in order by exploring an environment and eventually destroying it for science or for future science at that place. So just two more sentences. There is a panel of the Committee of Space Research of COSPAR, which you have probably all heard. And the panel is on planetary protection. And it is now a panel which is done in cooperation with the United Nations. And it has representatives, of course experts, but it has also representatives of the diverse space agencies, where there is a dialogue happening. They are also inviting Blue Origin, SpaceX, and all many people which they can get interested in order to discuss the future of, for instance, most urgent now, lunar exploration, and of course going further on to Mars. So this is just, I wanted to say, this is important to interact, and probably to, for you, for the next generation also, to interact with these kind of panels. Simonetta will probably talk about that tomorrow again. And this is really crucial, that when we are many stakeholders now, we have emerging countries, we have commercial stakeholders, we are really branching out. It's dynamics, it's a dynamic space sector. We are all very happy, we want to go further, but we really have to think about the future, what we are doing, to outer space, and how we do it diligently and really taking care and make it sustainable. And for that, we need to have a really an international dialogue, and also an interdisciplinary dialogue between the different stakeholders.
Thank you, Pascal. I think this was beautifully put. And thanks also for mentioning the panel. I'm sure everyone from the audience will be very eager to participate and share the views. And it's very important that we interact, obviously, in this type of discussions, also as representatives of the young generation. I would like to pick up on your comment about the importance of understanding each other. And I think for that, we really need to think about the narrative. This morning, we spoke about the importance of language and our vocabulary and how this defines who we are and the boundaries of our world. And so this reminds me of the work that we have done recently with SGAC, with the EAGLE team. So the EAGLE team, Effective and Adaptive Governance for a Lunar Ecosystem, has been a one-year project of the Space Generation Advisory Council to develop the position of the young generation on lunar exploration and lunar governance. And we worked for 1 year developing our insights on how we can ensure the sustainable and peaceful development of the moon. And to do that, we realized that the best contribution that we can give from the young generation perspective was on the narrative. Because one thing that we realized that the different actors were not talking to each other, not in the meaningful and constructive way that we need to ensure the peaceful and sustainable development of the moon. But we're still in time to develop that dialogue. And so as a challenge and a call to action to all the stakeholders, we proposed to the United Nations last week the idea of a lunar governance charter as a new instrument to frame a discussion on a principle level where we can all agree on the fundamental needs that we have for lunar exploration. So I think this touches upon different things that have been discussed here, and I would like to hear your thoughts on this new proposal also from the narrative, because we have a lot of political tensions also when it comes to space exploration, and sometimes if we just clear the air with new words, with new terms of reference, maybe that can help us move further. So I was wondering if anyone from the panel, Hamza, yes.
Thanks a lot, Antonino. And firstly, I'd like to start by congratulating you and the EAGLE team for an excellent job presenting your paper and your proposals at the Corpus EAGLE subcommittee. It was certainly representative of what SGAC thinks with regard to the future of lunar exploration. I think with regard to your question and with regard to your comment, it's so important to have a conversation at the global level about these issues, right? The more these issues start to become commonplace, the more people start to talk about these issues, and the more these issues get recognized, the faster we'll sort of move towards solutions in this area. This is something that came up in our working group several times. While we did agree that it was important to recognize political differences and work alongside them, we also sort of agreed that it is, you know, a collective responsibility. And we then reflected upon how, for example, the G7 just yesterday issued a statement which had an entire section on space sustainability. And it's milestones like that and it's moves like that by the, you know, broader global community that lead to conversations taking place in this area, and that lead to various stakeholders getting together and then moving towards proposing solutions. So I mean, in my view personally, we certainly think that, you know, I certainly think that a broader conversation needs to take place that sort of then sets the agenda for what the future of space exploration could hold. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Any other want to comment on this aspect? Okay. We have only roughly 10 minutes, so we'll go to my last question, but I think it's also important that we discuss the role of education. Because all of us, I think, we came to space in our career at a point where we already have been quite advanced, despite the fact that we are young. And I think it would be wonderful if we could develop tools to engage not the young generation, but the youngest generation from really the bottom of the education system. And I think, I don't know if this came up in any of the working groups discussion, but the importance of inspiring really the youngest, and how do we do that? How do we do a better job so that a kid in elementary school will not just dream of an astronaut, because obviously that's what we did, but will dream of becoming space system engineers, you know, something that is not the very mainstream, but still fundamental job. Is this anything that came up in your discussions on the role of education and how to prepare the future generation as we go by with space exploration? Cami?
Thanks, Nino. Yeah, we actually spent quite a lot of time in our working group talking about the role of education. We actually shared our experiences coming from Costa Rica, Colombia, Kuwait, Russia, and the UAE on how looking at the sky, the starry night, watching documentaries on TV, seeing documentaries about the first men in space, the first men on the moon, inspired us to pursue a career in space in our countries. And we actually agree on how that keep us like sparking our interest and our desire to pursue our career in space. We also agree that when talking about the space with our colleagues in school, they used to maybe bully us, maybe laugh at us because nobody believed that we could become astronauts or we could actually pursue a career in space. And actually, when we made that dream happen, everybody started saying like, you could do it. So, and we used that fuel to the engine to keep pursuing our career in space. That was actually a thought shared by Hasa, how his friends used to laugh at him when he said that he wanted to become an astronaut at some point in his life. But in that time, the UAE didn't have a space program. Now he's the first Emirati in space. And he used that back in the day to fuel his interest to keep pursuing his dream to become an astronaut. And we agree that it's a similar situation for all of us, and I'm pretty sure for many in the audience is the same situation. So how can we inspire? Be bold, being creative, and when you share your passion, when you share your knowledge, when you share your experience, when you share your history and people see what you're doing, that you keep pushing, people start believing that this is possible. So that's how we inspire the next generation. That's how we inspire the young kids in every school on earth. So the more we do, the more we leave our comfort zone, the more people can believe that this can actually be a reality in our everyday life.
Thank you, Cami. And I think on this note, we can slowly go to our conclusion. So I would like, first of all, to thank all the chairs of the working groups for their fantastic job. I think you guys really did a great job. I hope you had fruitful discussion, but based on your conclusions, I'm sure you did. Obviously, I want to thank the presenters, but also all the working group co-chairs who did not present, and also the participants. I hope this was also a useful experience for you. I also would like, as we conclude our event, to thank once more Roscosmos for hosting us during the activity of GLEX, the IF, obviously for their support, and in particular, the Workforce Development Young Professional Program Committee of the IF, who co-organized today's event together with Space Generation Advisory Council. Final few words on my side. I hope today was inspiring and insightful. That was really the purpose of it. You're gonna have a great Congress in front of you to learn more and more about space exploration, but the purpose of today was really to give you the perspective of the young generation and also to stimulate the young generation to participate more. I think there is a lot of appetite for more young people to be involved in space at all levels. So I would like to pick up on what Cami just said, push your boundaries and try to feel more empowered. I'm sure that if you work enough, if you work hard enough, there is a lot of people that would like to listen and probably even to follow. So keep this in mind. As a young generation, we have a lot to do. We have a great responsibility, but we also can achieve amazing dreams. We can really build the future on the moon, on Mars. And so this is really, hopefully, the message that we can have at the end of our activities, that there is a lot of work to do, but we have a lot of good ideas. And hopefully with these ideas and our dreams, as young people, we also like to dream, but we also need to be practical and try to fulfill those dreams. And this only comes from hard work, from dialogue, and from fruitful cooperation among each other, around the globe, and with partners, with international partners. And I think as young people, we really feel the importance of international cooperation. So I'm very hopeful for the future. And with that, I would like to thank you all. This was a fantastic day, and I would like to leave the floor to Pascal Ehrenfraund, President of the IF, for some closing remarks on the side, and then Chris will give you some organizational thoughts on the rest of the day. Thank you all very much.
So, good afternoon again, and I'm really happy to see you again and still full of energy, after this intense morning and afternoon. And I hope that you actually really enjoyed every minute of it, and that you will leave this place with great memories of the GLEX 21 Next Generation Day. So be reassured, it is not over yet. We have a magnificent evening ahead for us at the planetarium. Christian tells me it's legendary, yeah? And let me first thank all the organizers of this day, the IAF Workforce Development Young Professionals Program, and the committee of the Space Generation Advisory Council, who did really a remarkable job in putting together a really very interesting program. It's great to see that space exploration raises such interest and enthusiasm among the young generation, and it shows not only the importance of space exploration, but also what it can hold for the future. So as I stressed this morning, during the opening ceremony, the next generation is of ultimate importance for the International Astronautical Federation, and I'm proud that during my presidency also new programs which are targeted to students and young professionals are coming to life, even during the pandemic. So last year we actually created the IAF Launchpad Mentorship Program, which is actually nearly finished already, which focused on the mentorship and also on career development. And this program was initiated by Dr. Minu Ratnasaparbati. She's the IAF Vice President for Education and Workforce Development, and it really aims to facilitate career development, very specific, to the person and also leadership capabilities of the mentees, and provides also a platform for enhanced communication between the generations represented within the International Astronautical Federation. Then we have also the IAF Emerging Space Leaders Grant Program, which each year enables up to 25 students and young professionals to participate in the International Astronautical Congress and also the UN IAF Workshop and the Space Generation Congress. So a big program, and I really invite you to visit the IAF website to learn more about all these programs for the ones which don't know them yet. And we have seen a great number of young talented people rising from these initiatives, and I look forward to seeing even more similar projects coming to life. As you all know, this week, CLEX 2021 celebrates the 60th anniversary of Yuri Gagarin's spaceflight. It is marked everywhere in this room and in this palace. And obviously it marks the beginning of humankind's spaceflight era. And needless to say that Yuri Gagarin is an inspiration to all of us. His courage and his resilience were exemplary. And this is the kind of audacity you, the next generation, must possess, because you are the Yuri Gagarin of tomorrow, you are the Neil Armstrong of tomorrow, and of course you are the Valentina Tereshkova of tomorrow. And it's so wonderful to see also so many female participants here. You are the future, and the future of space exploration. It's in your hands. As we all know, space exploration missions sometimes go over decades. And when we are talking now about human exploration of Mars, it is still some decades ahead. And it is really important to inspire the next generation. So always dig deeper into your imagination and capabilities. Never be afraid of failures, because failure is only a lesson that will lead you to success in the future. I wish you a great evening, and I thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you very much, Pascal, for these inspiring and encouraging words to the young generation and to all of us. And thanks, Antonino, and all the panelists for these great discussions. I think this was really inspiring. And I think you will agree with me that the International Astronautical Federation and its events are an ideal platform for the young generation to get engaged with the global space community And there are numerous opportunities to do that. And we would like to show you a short video now that gives you a bit of an idea on how you can engage to become a volunteer in the IEF. Please enjoy the short video.
Why should you become an IEF volunteer? The IEF connects space people from all over the world. Since its foundation in 1951, the IAF has been establishing a dialogue to foster peaceful international cooperation and to create a space-faring world collaborating for the benefit of humanity. The IAF has been able to accomplish its mission thanks to the support of its volunteers. Here is why you too should become an IAF volunteer. It's good for you. Contributing to the IAF by doing something that you like will make you happier and healthier. You gain professional experience. You can connect to top-level worldwide experts in the field and profit from their experience. You learn a lot. You will access to more than 30,000 articles representing more than 65 years of concentrated knowledge in astronautics. You enlarge your network. The IAF is in 6 continents. You get a chance to give back. You can participate in the IAF mentoring program, contributing to building the space workforce of the future. You make a difference. Getting involved in the IAF activities, events, and programs will mean being part of a peaceful and powerful global movement where every person counts. You become an active actor. As the IAF volunteer, you can help shape the International Astronautical Congress as the event you and the entire space community would like to have. So come on board and get involved. Visit the IAF website on www.iafastro.org and join one of the IAF administrative and technical committees, or simply donate to one of our students and young professional grant programs.
So, this brings us actually to the end of the official program of this Next Generation Day at GLEX 2021. I thank you once again, all who are here with us in the room, who have worked in the working groups, but also a big thanks to all of those who have connected with us on the live stream from all over the world. Now, for those who will be able to join us this evening, we look forward to seeing you in the planetarium, and I just wanted to alert you that the bus transfers will leave from the front of the Tavritsky Palace, and the first buses will already start leaving at something like 5:30, 5:45. So slowly move there, get your seat on the bus, and enjoy the nice evening. Thanks to all of you. See you tomorrow for the opening day. Bye-bye.